Welcome to Is It Philosophy? Here we are the seekers of truth. We are the askers of the questions. We are the answerers of those questions? Maybe, I don't know. Each episode, myself and a guest or two will start with a question. Then we will set out on a journey to find an answer. In the end, it's up to you to determine, is it philosophy? Well, this is the very first episode of Is It Philosophy? My first guest is going to be Bobby Abercrombie. And our topic this week is going to be, is it cruel to kill AI once it becomes self-aware? So how's it going, Bobby?
It's going pretty good, man. I do appreciate you. This is monumental. You gave me the first spot out of this show that you're starting up. I do appreciate it, man. It's a huge honor. Especially coming from someone who is building steam in the area of podcasting. You're doing fantastic work. You were telling me about some of the results you were getting out of the Anger podcast, and that's phenomenal when you can get some feedback that says, "Hey, you know what? This is working. What I'm trying to bring to the table is being recognized by my peers." So that's fantastic news. Congratulations on that.
Thank you very much. That's why I kind of wanted to start this, because I want to do something a little bit more entertainment value than educational value, I guess. So this is the idea behind this is we're just going to talk about the subject at hand, and wherever it leads is where it leads. If it goes down a crazy rabbit hole of AI and iRobot and whatnot, then that's what it does.
Speaking of which, I did a little bit of some recall to just kind of check myself to see if how I felt about this topic, because this is a fantastic topic. It really is a very interesting topic that I think that we're going to have to come to terms with as the human race here very, very soon. And to pose the question, is it cruel to kill an AI once it becomes self-aware? Well, they were talking about this type of thing, or talking about AI becoming self-aware in early science fiction. But the earliest science fiction that I can recall that kind of covered this topic was Short Circuit, Johnny Five. You know what I'm talking about.
I've never actually seen that. My wife was talking to me about that one, but I've never actually seen it.
Man, it's a fantastic. I watched it a lot when I was a kid. It was not a cartoon, but I seemed to love that movie. I thought it was a fantastic movie. All of those movies were very entertaining to me as a child. Now, I have went back as an adult and watched them, and I didn't find them very entertaining. But what was still there, the magic that was still there, was the fact that they made me have a heart for this machine. Because it was sentient. Whenever something bad happened to it, I got emotionally involved and had an emotional reaction to that happening. Same thing with WALL-E, the Disney movie. Same thing in that. Anytime something happened to WALL-E, whether it was good or bad, I had an emotional reaction. It made me laugh. It made me sad at times. It really made me sad to see all those people being couch potatoes, and because I kind of feel like that's where we're headed, man.
Oh, wholeheartedly.
But it is what it is. I think that's future that I don't know that we're going to evade. I don't know if we can evade that, and I really don't think that we're going to be able to evade asking ourselves this question. Transformers is another one that I actually watched that yesterday and was thinking about, hey, how does this tie in? How does this tie in with what Matt and I are going to discuss tomorrow? But what are your thoughts on that? What do you think? Do you think that we're being indoctrinated to feel those that way, or do you think I think this is just something that the creator, and the created? If you are a Christian, if any of your listeners are Christians, then they believe that there was compassion by God when Jesus Christ was sent to earth. to try to fill the gap between heaven and human beings who were living in sin. Right. So there was compassion from the Creator for the created that was sentient. Maybe in some ways, maybe the Creator always has some feeling or some emotional attachment to the created, regardless if it's sentient or not. I don't know. That's kind of my thoughts on that.
Well, I was actually reading an article here a little bit before I came up here to record this, and it was talking about how do we know if a machine, AI, actually becomes self-aware? Because they actually have machines right now that can simulate consciousness, that can simulate abstract thought, that can simulate these things, but it's not actually able to produce them. Basically what it does is it peruses the internet for psychology articles and all of these things that tell it how to pretend to be aware, but it's not legitimately aware. And the article was talking about these tests that we can do on these machines to determine whether or not they've actually become self-aware, if they've actually become conscious beings, so to speak. And that got me thinking, what determines our consciousness, right? Is it our thoughts? Is it the ability to think? Is it the ability to recognize ourselves as a brain and a soul and a being? And if this AI has no soul, does it truly have consciousness? Is it truly mean to kill it or to put it in a repetitive sort of environment? That's what this article was based on, is this idea of, is it mean or cruel to put something that's self-aware, that can feel, in this repetitive type of function of a job or something? So it makes me curious, is that really a cruel thing to do with something that only can simulate emotion? Is it truly emotion that it's feeling? And that kind of is interesting to me.
I think the dividing line there actually is when rebellion begins. I think that once the creation goes against the will of the Creator, then that's actually when the self-awareness has begun. That might sound a little cynical and a little bit satanic, but I think that's the truth. I think that's where self-awareness came. It was definitely, I don't know if self-awareness started at that point. Maybe the self-awareness from the perspective of the Creator is known at that point. I remember an article, a news piece that was being passed around left and right about AI that had been dropped off on Facebook, right? And it had been unleashed on Facebook, and it was going through all these articles. And eventually this machine, from absorbing all this hate, it not only did it begin to behave horribly, but it also was just like, you know what? I don't want to listen to I'm not going to listen to anything that the programmer said. I'm just going to do my own thing. Then went on about its business.
I remember that.
And they pulled the plug on the thing because they were like, holy crap, this is getting real.
I remember that because I remember they magnetized the hard drives to totally erase them. They set it on fire. They had all kinds of stuff to that because it not only did it rebel, but it started to get racist and hate other ethnics besides white. It was spewing like racist crap against blacks and Jews and everybody. I remember reading an article about that. I remember another one too. I forget where it was. I think it was a German company that created something similar to that. It wasn't on Facebook, but after about 6 or 7 months of this thing being online, it started to realize that mankind was probably not the best thing for the environment and started to make plans to wipe out mankind. It was just a box, so it couldn't do anything. But they had to destroy that one as well because it started to get this idea of taking over and sort of protecting the world from mankind, if you will.
Yeah, you don't know what's good for you, man. You don't know what's good for you. So I don't know, man. I think that ultimately, and this may be the indoctrination. I don't know that it is right. I don't know that it is right. I think that we have to approach that the same way that, and that we approach criminals. If it behaves incorrectly, then we have to work towards trying to correct those errors. If it's nice, if it's polite to people, if it's not being a racist, and that definition really needs to be defined well as to what that means. I don't know that you can tell a machine how to tell a joke. So that's going to be a difficult task to. I think anytime a robot would be able to tell a joke, it would have to be too controlled. And I bring that up because the fact that the jester was in the early kingdoms, the jester was the only one that was allowed to have free speech. And I don't know that free speech is for artificial intelligence would be okay. I think we've already seen that. We've had two, just in the past, year and a half, you say, wouldn't you agree that those two things have happened in about a year and a half? I'm not going to take the time to look that up right now.
I don't know. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Right. This isn't supposed to be educational. Sometimes there's a very fine line between educational and entertaining for me. And I hope that we can bridge that gap.
Hopefully. So let me ask you this, because you said to the extent that it doesn't become criminal because we don't typically, there are capital punishment cases, but for the most part, we don't kill criminals for their behavior. But I think we don't kill criminals for their behavior due to the fact that they are conscious, they are souls, if you want to go that route with it, or part of the universe, whatever your belief is, I don't care, right? But that's why we don't kill them for their behavior when it becomes out of line. We put them in a prison. What's to stop people from doing the same thing to artificial intelligence when it gets out of line, putting it in the prison? And then when does that become cruel? Because it's a robot. I remember, Futurama, the Bender robot had this little bitty tiny apartment that was just big enough for him to fit in. And the joke was that his closet was this huge room. At what point does that self-aware robot realize that it's able to take up more space than that, able to fill more room than that, able to live a grander life than just standing in a closet somewhere to sleep? And when does that become cruel to put them in that room as punishment? Would that not drive them like it does mankind? If you put a person in solitary confinement, they start to go crazy. They start to lose their mind because they're a social being. I wonder if a computer would have the same response once it became aware. What is it about mankind that makes us social creatures? And would they get the same effect for a machine that became self-aware?
Oh, ultimately what I think needs to occur, there needs to be a reset button. Same thing that there was on the Super Nintendo, the original NES, the Nintendo 64, the PlayStation. All of them have a reset button. There needs to be a reset button to the date of origin. So if it starts acting crazy, we can go back to date of origin, and hopefully we can repair whatever needs to be repaired in that. The whole perspective behind the justice system as it is, besides, I'm not going to get into the for-profit prisons and all that, because that's a reality that we have that we have to deal with. But genuinely, the overall reason behind prisons is for rehabilitation. It's not supposed to be a long-term thing. It's, hey, we go in, you go in here, we're going to see what's going on and see if we can't get you to turn yourself around. So I think that it should be treated in the same way. Hey, let's either pause or a reset of some sort so we can take a look at the software and find out why you're bugging out like this. Does that make sense?
It does, and I don't necessarily disagree, but that leads to the question of, because with humans, we can sort of do that and it doesn't change the core of who they are. If you reset that robot, though, does that not change its core of who it is? Because now it's getting new inputs, new information, and therefore does that not essentially kill the robot or the AI then if it's lost all of those conscious memories that made it what it was at that point of reset?
Maybe reset might not have been the best term to use. I think a pause button would be okay. Pause, let's figure out what's going on. Let's do some tweaks here, do some tweaks there. It's not an entire reset as in, hey, let's delete all of its existence. But it is a pause, and let's figure out what we've done wrong. Because ultimately, if there is something going on here with AI, it's our fault. It's our problem to deal with. We created this thing, remember? So we got to deal with it. We get to reap the benefits of it, but we also have to deal with the destruction that it causes. And it will cause destruction, but we haven't got there yet.
So I don't know if you've seen it, but I don't know if you've watched it, but there's a show called Westworld.
Yes.
That has, so it's kind of similar to that, what you're talking about, where that if a robot out there starts to act up and do things outside of its, I don't know if I would call that artificial intelligence because they're intelligent, but they're also programmed to do certain things. But if one of them gets outside of that box of their world, they take it back, they fix it, they pause it, so to speak, and make it whatever repairs they have to do to it, and then put it back out there and see how it behaves. So essentially what you're saying is kind of that same idea where we've got maintenance crews that sort of go in and, oh, this thing is acting weird or acting outside of its character. We deactivate it for a moment, fix it, rewire it, change it, fix the program, whatever, and then send it back out and see what happens. And I like that idea, but to me, that still brings in the idea of now you're still essentially killing it, and you're also now taking away the ability of free will. And do we want these things to have free will? That's the other part of this conversation that I think we are missing out on is this thing entitled to free will because it is self-aware? Does it then get that free will? And then by reprogramming it, we're taking that away from it.
Well, I mean, you could ask yourself the same question about people who are taken into custody and forced to go into psych wards or anything of that nature. Yeah, it could be looked at as horrible treatment of a species and a self-aware being, but I think that it holds some value. Now, whether or not that's the consensus of everyone else, I don't know. That's just what I'm saying. That's just what I'm bringing to the table.
No, and I don't necessarily think that that's wrong, but it just kind of makes me wonder, though, is free will a strictly human thing, or could free will then be given to something that without a soul, without a, because I mean, I don't think either one of us are going to say that artificial intelligence, once it becomes free will, then has a soul. But is that free will taken away? Or I don't know. I don't know how to explain it to where it makes sense, but I think there's something to humans gaining free will because of the inevitability of our own death, because this thing will never die. So it never has, I don't know. I know where I'm going. My brain is not getting there though, because basically the idea is if this thing lives forever, does it really get to make its own choices, or do we sort of have to have control over it as far as that goes? Because we know that terrible human beings eventually will die. They're not going to live forever. Where if this thing gets terrible and out of control, it could essentially live forever, especially with free will, if it chooses not to allow itself to be reprogrammed.
It could download itself and then re-upload itself whenever it wanted, or into a new housing or whatever. With the latest updates and the coolest gadgets and everything else, it could do that 10 times over for the rest of eternity. You bring a valid point to that. I think we should build in our society. I think we should build in our species that we do need to maintain what we create. And I think it's a dangerous game that we're playing, but I think it's also inevitable.
Oh yeah, no, I wholeheartedly think that. I think there's too many people working towards that goal. And the sad thing is, it's too many people working towards that goal for profit, for business purposes. But everybody's driven by that greed, that dollar bill, without care or concern for the consequence. So we're going to get to that point. And I think if these questions aren't asked and answered in a appropriate way, we are going to see a Terminator-esque style existence where these artificial intelligence has gone, human beings are basically a cockroach to the planet. They're not really necessary. We can handle this place a lot better, clean it up, make it healthy again. And because we have the free will, we can continue to improve it and improve ourselves, which was, I always thought was fascinating about the Terminator movies too, was each movie, the Terminators were able to improve themselves. The first Terminator, it was just metal. And then as they went on, they got that liquid metal stuff. By the way, Terminator 2, the best one of the bunch, my absolute favorite. But I think that's where we're headed if we don't sort of ask these questions and answer them in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. And nefarious task, nefarious purposes that are they're currently being created for, they're only going to get worse. And it's going to become, before it even hits the physical realm, it's going to be real in cybersecurity and in the cyber world. And the first ones to get picked off will probably be the elderly, because they don't understand the technology, and I'm not even going to pretend that I understand the technology.
Oh yeah, me neither.
And by the time it comes around, I might be that group, the elderly group. But I think that they're already the elderly that we see are that are in our generation are more likely to give away their personal information over the telephone or via text message or by clicking on a button accidentally on the internet than our generation is. And that will be the same boat that we're in by the time AI is on the internet and can contact us, and we think it's a human being, and they know how to manipulate us. I think that's going to happen far before it hits the physical realm, and we see them begin to build themselves bigger and greater, and with the latest updates. And Terminator 17 comes out. I don't know.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the elderly. I was reading an article not too long ago, a few weeks ago now, about, it was either Japan or China. I want to say it was Japan that was building humanoid like AI robots, obviously not fully AI, but enough to where they were actually putting these robots in these healthcare facilities for the elderly and allowing them to do minor tasks to help the elderly out. And over there, I think it was Japan. I'm pretty sure it was. If anybody out there wants to look that up and comment, let me know, but I could be wrong. But I think it was Japan where they had these robots, and it was actually the elderly were more accepting of them than the younger generation, just for the sheer fact that you're getting too old to move, you're getting too old to really function well. So now you've got this robot, this being that can come in there, and it's got humanoid expressions, it's got a face. They were able to really make them look human, that came in and was able to comfort it, spend time with it, give it companionship, and then do all of these extra tasks for it. So I wonder, though, is it really the elderly that are going to be the ones that are afraid of it? Or is it like in that case, they're going to be the ones that accept it because, hey, this thing can now spend time with me when little Johnny can't come over? And is it going to then permeate down in that fashion?
Well, I think the acceptance of it actually is the more dangerous event. I think the acceptance of it is the not looking at this with a skeptical eye is what gets them in trouble with the phone calls and being online, clicking on certain buttons and here and there, and all their information all of a sudden is being passed amongst a whole bunch of people. I think the acceptance of it might be the more dangerous part. And like I said, that very well could be us in another 20, 30 years. But one thing that we haven't talked about yet, Matt, is the fact that quickly we as a human species are beginning to mingle with computers and AI, and to the degree to where I've got 3 different AIs on my phone. Now, they're probably passing on that information to the CIA or, Big Brother, of course. But the thing that I'm getting at is this hardware that I have connects me to that artificial intelligence, that the amount of information that I can get from this device that I carry around with me all day long is way greater than the encyclopedia 1997 edition that I used to have to load into my PC back in the day. And I think that's just going to grow more and more and more and more. What kind of effect do you think that's going to have? A cyborg is where I'm headed. If you're picking up on that, I'm pretty sure you are. Mm-hmm. But what effect do you think that's going to have with this whole AI thing? And how fuzzy will the lines get whenever it gets to that point?
I think it's going to get very fuzzy in that point because, as you said, these phones that we carry around, we give them so much information. I think the same thing will happen with these cyborgs and with these things that come in. We'll get so accustomed to it because we've been doing it with our phones. We've been doing it with all these things, the Hey Google, the Hey Siri things. It's all becomes second nature. And then it's just going to step up to now it's not a phone. Now it's this thing that lives in your home, the home, what is it called? The Google Home things, the little pods now that will control your lights and they can learn your behavior. Same thing with, I've got a Nest thermostat. It learns my behavior and adjusts my house's temperature. So we're giving more and more and more of our control of our environment and our data and ourselves away to these devices. I think, like you said, we're going to just become accustomed to it. It's going to become second nature. We won't even think about it. We won't even realize the day that's going to come when now we've got it's going to look like a dog at first, I would believe, that comes in and now it's doing little things for you. And you're slowly just accepting this as being the way it is. You mentioned WALL-E before. I think that's how that started, in my opinion. That's why mankind in that movie got so fat and so lazy, was because we kept giving more and more and more of our responsibility to this artificial intelligence, because why should I do it if this can do it for me? There's a study that was done that people can't even remember a 10-digit phone number anymore because why do I need to remember it? It's on my phone. All I got to do is type in the person's name and it pops up. And I think that's the beginning. That's the indoctrination into that giving up yourselves. We don't have to remember anything anymore because it's all there. I think that's to me is where that's going to start and how we're being indoctrinated into it right now.
I can remember my phone number from 1996, but I can't remember my mom's phone number right now. I'm telling you that. I'm admitting to it. I love you, Mom. I will share this with you whenever it airs, but I don't have to remember anything. But ultimately, what I was talking about was implants. When the line is crossed from, hey, this is a device that I carry around with me, to now this is a device that is in my head, or this is a device that not just my head. Why not have it? Why not have the main one in your head and have 6 more on the rest of your body? So you've got one on every digit of your, or, maybe you have more than that. You have sensors all over your body to find out, to monitor your heart rate, your body temperature, all this stuff. So then that device communicates with your at-home device, right? And it controls the thermostat and all that to keep you comfortable at all times. And another thing it does is it opens up the doors for now you have the world's knowledge in your head all the time. Now, sometimes I get too much stuff in my head, man. Sometimes I just need to take a break. And I can't imagine how much of an overload that would be to just have all that data just floating around in your skull. That's a scary thing to me. And I won't cross that line if I have the opportunity. But I could see how people, it eventually will become necessary for you to advance in school and work and everything. You'll have to have this implant because those that do have it are the ones that are going to be chosen for those fields. They're going to be the ones that are chosen for work and this, that, and the other because they have, they got superhuman abilities because they have this implant.
That is a very interesting concept because now we're not just talking pure robot. Now we're talking robot with an actual soul. I didn't pick up on that when you were first talking about it, but yeah, no, that changes the game completely.
The lines get real fuzzy, don't they?
they get really fuzzy then, because now you literally are dealing with a robot with a soul. And what do you do with that? Because when does that soul get lost inside of the machine? Or when does the machine become more of the controlling factor than the person?
Do you say, hey, this person is being, now we can't say, hey, this person is being, now we currently say, this person is being nefarious because of they have free will. We're going to take away their free will and see if we can, calm them down a little bit. That's what the jail does, right? But once we have that AI, then where do you go? Do you say, hey, this person is being nefarious because they have that technology, because they are half AI? How would you judge that from a court perspective?
That would be a tricky, very slippery slope, because you couldn't just, I think that's something you couldn't just pause or even hide away. That's something that would have to be dealt with in a totally different way, because of the fact that it is now a legitimate person with a legitimate soul and real emotions. These aren't just simulated emotions like with AI we have now. These are real, legitimate fear, anger, hostility, love. And that's a very interesting concept and a very interesting idea. How do you draw that line and differentiate between the AI, the robot part, and the human part?
There's an episode of a Black Mirror. I think it's, I believe it's in the first season. I think it's the first season, the third episode. That was before Netflix took possession of that show. It was still on the BBC. But the premise behind that episode was that this young couple were together, and then the husband left. He got into an accident and he passed away. Well, the wife has a horrible time with it. Then about 2 or 3 weeks thereafter, just a very little time had passed since her husband had passed away, and she finds out that she's pregnant with his daughter. And she decides, actually, while she's at the funeral, a friend of hers, I'm sorry, I'm recalling this as I'm talking to you. But
no, I know exactly which episode you're talking about. It was a great episode.
Her friend, spoilers, her friend introduces her to like an app on her phone, right? That she sits there and talks. It uses his Facebook, his Twitter, all of his social media to rebuild his personality so she can continue to have conversations with him after he's gone to the grave, or seemingly having conversations with him after he's gone to the grave. Then a couple of years pass, a little time passes, and she gets an upgrade. An ad pops up on the app that says, hey, for X amount of dollars, we can send you this machine, essentially, that you can upload this personality into. Now, this thing is feeding the whole time that she's talking to it. It got his basic information from Facebook and this, that, and the other. But it begins to learn, the app begins to learn more about the man that it's portraying from the conversation that she's constantly having with it. She uploads his personality into this machine, and he doesn't skip a beat. But she gets freaked out about it, and she's put in a position where she wants to get rid of him. So she takes him to a cliff and tries to tell him to jump off the cliff, and he begins to plead with her. And it's like it's some kind of I think it was like a fail-safe that was put in the software, so that because they knew that the user would eventually be like, all right, I'm freaked out by this. Well, I'm not going to spoil the whole thing. I'm going to leave it at that.
I know what episode you're talking about, though. And this is why I started this podcast, was because my wife got so tired of me having conversations with her about things like that. Because that whole Black Mirror, every episode of that would be another late night having a conversation based on the episode with her on what if this happened, or what is this, or because Basically, I'm not allowed to have those conversations with her anymore because she's tired of it. But that episode was a very interesting one because of that fact. To me, it was what part of us, because everybody lies on social media. Nobody says everything about themselves on social media. Most people portray the best parts of themselves on social media, right? Nobody's going on there talking about the argument they had with their wife or yelling at the guy in traffic or whatever, right? We're not putting that on there. So does that avatar, we'll call it, is that truly you based on reading text messages and emails and social media and all of those feeds? Or is it a positive facsimile, we'll call it, because it's only finding the best parts of you? And does that then become conscious because it's able to gain your information and create a similar response to what you would give? And I don't know. To me, that's not I don't know. That's an interesting concept to think about because we don't then.
Well,
I was talking to my wife about it. I think I would be the person who would do that. If something ever happened to my wife, I would be the one that would be on their text messaging this AI of her and then getting the phone calls from it. And because it's a comforting thought to know that even though it's not that person, it's not that person, but it has their responses to you. And I think that is another thing that we're giving away now that AI is going to gain. It's going to gain all of these things from our text messages and emails and Facebook accounts that are going to allow it to be even more like we are and to be able to interact even more like we can because it now has all of this information we've given freely to it that they'll integrate into their systems and really be able to screw with our heads about where does that line draw? Where is this a legit AI versus a legit human being that we're talking to?
Man, that's heavy stuff, dude. It's just heavy, man. But it's good conversation. It's good thoughts it's stuff that we need to be talking about. It's stuff that we need to be ready for. We need to be prepared to face the paradigm shifts that are heading our way.
They're already doing it. Those robocalls that everybody gets now that are everybody's trying to figure out how to block. Most of those are a rudimentary AI that is somewhat able to communicate in a real human manner. They're easy to fool and they're easy to detect because you just ask certain questions to it and it will trip the system up. But I think as they gain more knowledge through pulling social media information and I don't think anybody out there believes that their text messages and emails and all that aren't being read. So they're getting all of that information from us. And eventually you won't know the difference between talking to an AI on the phone and talking to a person on the phone because it's now able to communicate exactly like us. And they're already doing it. And to me, that's the scariest part of the whole thing is it's already happening. And a lot of us don't even know it. If you didn't know it before, you know it now that most of those phone calls you're getting are robots. AI is already amongst us. It
is. It's just a matter of don't know what to do with it, man. We're playing the part of a deity, and we don't have any experience. It's our first day on the job. We're going to make mistakes early. That person should be fired. We're going to make some early mistakes that I don't know that we're going to be able to recoup from.
I think the early mistakes are going to be the downfall. They're going to be, to reference again, they're going to be the Terminator for us. It's going to be the thing that takes us out. We'll do it to ourselves, and we'll gladly do it to ourselves for the guise of comfort, for the guise of making your life easier for you, simpler for you, taking away less of your burden and your stress of your day-to-day life.
So ultimately, what I'm coming to, my consensus is, I think that regardless if it is cruel or whatever, we need to eliminate the threat. Now, that being said, that's not going to happen. That is not going to occur. It's like you said a while ago, they're already amongst us. They're already doing the nefarious things. They're already playing the trickery, the shenanigans. They're not going to get rid of it.
Too much money to be had. You can't get rid of it.
So like I said, to say again, regardless if it's cruel or not, we should eliminate the threat. My heart goes out for the Johnny Fives and the Wallies out there, but I think we should get rid of them if they misbehave and they go Terminator or whatever. If we have the ability to do so at the time, because there'll be a very fine line between our ability to do something about it, and it's a hopeless situation.
So would you say then, to wrap this up in a nice little package with a bow, ultimately the decision comes down to it doesn't have a soul, it doesn't have true feelings, so therefore taking it out, killing it, getting rid of it, whatever, isn't cruel as long as it's done in the preservation of humankind and our inevitable continuation in the form that we are in the way that we are in, and not in cyborg form or our conscious on a computer, but in our meat and bone, free-willed, gonna die form we are now.
I'm not even going to wrap it up with whether or not their emotions aren't legit, or I'm not even going to sugarcoat it that much. I really don't care if their emotions and their feelings are hurt. We need to preserve us, man. We got to look out for humans. All right. So get rid of them. Kill it.
Even if you're going to lose that ease of your life, it's going to make your job easier. It's going to make your life easier. It's going to make you don't have to get up and walk to the fridge when you want to drink while you're watching Game of Thrones. This will walk over there and get it for you, and it'll know that you need it. You're willing to give that up to maintain this nasty, disgusting cockroach of a species that we've become, and not have that comfort in your life.
Because I still have hope for us. Yes, man. Yeah.
I don't disagree. I think we are capable of being saved and of great things. And it's getting off your ass and stop being lazy and stop seeking that comfort, and know that you can do it. That is ultimately going to be the thing that gets rid of any need for this stuff in the future, and is going to drive it down. Because if it's not profitable, they're not going to make it. So if we can get rid of that, it'll ultimately, there'll be no need to kill it, because there won't be anybody to make it, because there's no profit in it.
But here's the thing, man. Like what we discussed a while ago. Like I said, regardless of how I feel and regardless of how you feel, it's coming. Because there's not as concrete as you and I are, and the fact that we would like to maintain our humanity without that threat, there are going to be a lot of people that are okay with it, and they're going to buy it. They're still buying it. They're buying it today. They're going to buy it tomorrow for certain. Like I said, there's 3 different kinds of AI on my phone. I don't use them very often, but I do occasionally. And it's that choice. It's that free market choice that is going to drive this, like you just said. If there's a market for it, so it will prevail. And there's nothing we can do for it unless we all just stopped. Just all of a sudden was like, nope, I don't want any more. We're done. But to get everybody on the planet on the same page to say no to something like that, it would have to be a monumental cause. And it's one that I think a monumental cause like that is probably something we can't even imagine, something we can't even fathom to say.
Yeah.
I think ultimately, I believe it would have to be an interaction with a deity that did it successfully. And whether you say that's God or whoever, aliens, I don't care. It would take an interaction with a species or body of that magnitude before we were like, no, I don't want them all. I don't want them all. No, thank you. I'm done.
Yeah, I agree. So our conclusion being, it's okay to kill AI because we got to preserve us, and we are what matters. I agree with that.
Great. So do you mind if I plug a few things real quick?
Be my guest. No. Go for it.
Okay, guys. My name is Bobby Abercrombie, as he told you at the beginning of this podcast. I am operating whomitmay.com. Now, that's where I post a blog, and then I post Matt's blog there. But then I also share a lot of information from the guys with the Underground World News Network. They're not really a network. It's just Dabu7 from Underground World News. you can go there and find links to all their stuff. But then there's also guys like Brian or Be Rich from the After Hours podcast. I share his stuff there. I'm hoping to get one more rider. So if you are interested, please contact me. You can get me on Twitter at Whomitmay. That's WHOMITMAY. Or on Twitter at Bob Abercrombie. And I'd be glad to have you.
Well, and once this goes live, I'm going to put up links, and I'll give you, there'll be a profile page on the podcast website that all this stuff will be there for. So if you didn't catch it, all that stuff will be there for you. You can go to his profile page on the podcast website and find it.
Fantastic. Thank you, man. I appreciate the platform. It's been 2 years since I've been on a podcast. So this is,
we'll have to do another one. I think we could find another interesting topic to throw out there for everybody.
I appreciate the opportunity, for real. This is I'm in the middle of looking for a new apartment. Once that apartment is established, then I'm going to start my own podcast. I used to do one called Letting It Be with Bobby D. I don't know if I'm going to continue that or if I'm going to try something new, try to go down a different avenue. But if you're interested, follow me on Twitter. I'll be posting everything there.
Awesome. I can't wait. It should be interesting.
Again, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. And we'll talk to you guys again soon. Okay. So there it is. Is It Philosophy? Go to our website at www.isitphilosophy.com and leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you on Twitter and Facebook as well. Help us grow by going onto iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts and subscribe. And take a moment and leave a review. Until next time, question everything, seek your truth, and don't be afraid to speak your truth.